This right here is one of the most iconic spots here in Bamberg, Germany.
But we're actually here for a few more days, so we're gonna see what other things there are to do in Bamberg. Bamberg was first mentioned in the year 902, which is why it's packed full of history and that still exists today. It was actually built on 7 hills, just like another famous city in Italy. You guessed it, Rome, and that's why a lot of people refer to Bamberg as Franconian Rome. However, the people of Bamberg prefer to call Rome Italian Bamberg. Well, Bamberg has so much to do and see, we actually decided to take a trip about 30 minutes outside of the city by foot to Altenburg Castle. So right now we're walking through this beautiful prairie with these amazing views of Bamberg behind us up to Altenburg, which is a castle with a beer garden in the middle of it. We're not quite sure exactly what it's like, but we're gonna check it out. Once we approached the castle from the hike, it was incredible with its old walls and just being so fortified, you can tell why it was built as a castle. However, the first thing we did when we got there was enjoy the beer garden inside. While the ice cold beer hit perfectly after that long hike, it was time to walk around the castle for a bit, and then we headed up the tower, which only costs €1 to get up.
Top of the tower. I'm out of breath. I'm about 7.5 months pregnant, but we made it. Here's a beautiful view of Bamberg.
It wasn't too bad coming up, and nor was it too cramped compared to other towers we've been up in our travels. But a little disappointing thing is that once you get all the way up here, it's all enclosed inside. It's not outside, you can't feel the wind, but it is a beautiful view of Bamberg and the surrounding Franconia region.
So we just came down a little bit. There was a little door and it took us to this kind of midpoint, but it's much better with fresh air and great views.
Once we were back in Bamberg, we were starving and ready for some food and drink. However, all the food and beer we had in Bamberg was just too much for one video. So we decided to make a second video of all the beer and food we had in Bamberg. Make sure to like and subscribe for that. However, there's something even more. We were joined on this trip to Bamberg by 2 friends, Ben and Camille from Near From Home, and they're gonna be with us in the beer and food tour of Bamberg. Make sure to give them a like and subscribe, follow their channel Near From Home, and now back to this video of 2 days in Bamberg. Our second day started off with the most iconic building here in Bamberg. So I'm here at perhaps the most historic, famous, and picturesque buildings here in Bamberg, but I would almost say one of the most beautiful buildings I have ever seen in the world, especially for a town hall. And that's right behind me here. It's the Old Town Hall here in Bamberg. It sits right on the Regnitz River on an island. As you can see, it's connected right by those 2 bridges, which makes it just truly remarkable. And as if it's just floating, but also perhaps gonna fall into the river. Now, as legend has it, it was actually built right in the middle because they didn't want to cede land to build a town hall right in the old town. And they built it purposely in the middle because on one side of town, up in the mountains, it was the rich area, and on the other, flatter prairie side, it was the poor area of town. Now, I know people might say there's a more beautiful building somewhere in the world, but a more beautiful town hall than this one? I don't think so. I mean, just look at it. And sitting inside of the town hall is actually a porcelain museum. So that's something to check out when you're here in Bamberg as well. So one of the really cool things here in Bamberg is that the entire Old Town is actually a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and it's been so for a while, and that's because it remains so intact. So you come from that Old Town Hall and you come right over here, and just across a tiny pedestrian bridge, you're suddenly transported back into this incredibly beautiful old-timey town that just oozes history, fine details on buildings, and everything you want when you travel to Germany. It's one of the best old towns we've seen that's still intact and still fairly large, which makes it definitely worth coming around and just taking your time to explore it and soak up the beautiful tradition and history here.
So we are over by the part of Bamberg that's considered Little Venice. It is beautiful. Some of these houses behind me are incredible. Some of them are maybe falling over, but nonetheless, super pretty over here. But this is kind of it. Maybe the part on the other side of the city is a bit more Venice looking.
So one of the really interesting things that we've noticed here in Bavaria that we didn't really expect to is all the religious figures and statues kind of adorned to the buildings. And that's because up in Lower Saxony and Hanover, we never see them, but there are a ton of them here. It actually reminds us a lot of when we lived in Spain and traveled, especially to southern Spain, like when we went to Cadiz. You can check out that video right up here. One of the most imposing buildings in all of Bamberg is the cathedral. It was built in 1012 and it towers over the old town and actually has a few different architectural styles which can be seen in its 4 towers, 2 of which are in the Gothic style and the other 2 in the Romanesque style. So right behind me here is the historic Old Court of Bamberg, and it was first built in 1003 and it's been rebuilt in different parts, but it still holds that historic charm that I know a lot of you are looking for and that we look for when we travel. It's really beautiful inside. Now there is a whole new theater set up in there that they're doing summer plays in, and it seems like it would be an incredible place to see a play. But behind me here is the main gate, and that's something I want to point out. There are actually 2 figures on it, one on the left and one on the right. The man on the left represents the main river, and it has a sleeping dog next to it, and that's because the sleeping dog represents kind of a slow, sluggish river, where on the right-hand side there's a woman with a playing child, and the playing child represents a more lively, spirited river, which is the Regnitz, both of which make up a significant part of Bamberg's history. Next up, we decided to go see the Rose Garden, which is inside the new residence or Neue Residenz here in Bamberg. It has over 4,500 roses, which at this time of year in early June were in perfect bloom. After the Rose Garden, it was back across the river through the Old Town Hall to the Grüne Markt, which is a green market. It's a pedestrian zone lined with market stalls selling everything from fresh produce to flowers, and it all ends in the Maximilianplatz, which is the heart of the new side of Bamberg. So we couldn't come to Bamberg without going to a beer museum, so we're gonna head into the Franconia Beer Museum to learn all about the brewing process as well as the history of beer here in Bamberg. The Franconian Beer Museum was chock full of history and information. It included everything from the entire brewing process all the way from when beer starts as a grain until it hits your glass. It also really detailed how important beer is to the history of Upper Franconia and Bamberg. In the museum, you walked through the entire brewing process all the way from the malt, where you could even smell some of the samples, and you got to see a bunch of the old machines all the way from the wort to the fermentation, and including old bottling and kegging machines. It was a really cool experience and something we would say is a must-do in Bamberg. And this is even coming from me, an old brewery tour guide back in the US. Shout out to Lakefront Brewery, which is a place you need to visit if you're ever in Milwaukee. After the beer museum, we decided to actually hit up some more of Bamberg's famous breweries, including one of the most famous breweries in Bamberg, Schlenkerlau, home to the most famous Rauk beers. So make sure to like and subscribe so you can get notified of that video right away.
And that's gonna do it for our time here in Bamberg.
And if you like videos like this, make sure to like, subscribe, and comment so you can check out our other videos as well as join us on our next adventure. Bye!